residential collection. And it has different layouts of what's hot right now, different styles, and all of the colors that correspond to them.
Ooh,
So this is kind of fun to look through.
the hot sheets.
Exactly, but that's it from me.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, grab a sandwich, grab a LaCroix, and we'll start in like a minute or two. We'll give you a little time to get settled in. Make sure the Zoom room is going good and everyone's getting settled. And then we'll get the event started tonight.
All the these in wheat, all the white. This one's wheat, all these are white. And then there's Italian, there's, these are the original Italian, this one's the club stub.
I'm trying to dial it.
You what?
I'm trying to diet it.
Ooh, I know, me too. I'm like totally saying no to sugar and all the bad things.
Alright, I'm gonna go for animal. So. Can't go wrong.
Cool.
How's Ava doing?
Ava's doing great, dude.
There we go.
She just got, I'll catch you up after this, but there's so much news in the past week.
All right, and free pens, Schwaegerle team sponsored pens. You all got one?
Yep, I handed them out.
Oh, thanks, Kim. Oh, you're awesome. All right, let's dive in, y'all. So thank you all for being here. And my name is Owen Schwaegerle. I'm a real estate broker, property owner, investor, somebody who just loves real estate, third generation real estate. My grandparents did it, my parents do it. So real estate's in my blood. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I love educating people to achieve the American dream. And right there, our mission is to connect with individuals to achieve their real estate dreams, experience financial freedom, and love where they live. So that's written up on the wall right there because that's the heartbeat behind everything we do here at the Schwaegerle team. So today, we are going to go through what the home buying process looks like, things to learn, what you need to know, some common vocabulary you'll come across, what the home buying lending process looks like. We have lender Kim Rivas with us here tonight to share more about the financing component of buying a home, which everyone wants to know so much about, some tips and tricks and how to save money and get a good deal in real estate. So that's our logo. We're the Schwaegerle team. That's a little house, commercial building, and land because we do all three, commercial, land, and residential. We're at Keller Williams Realty Central Coast, which is a great brokerage. We've been there since we started 7 years ago in real estate, and we love the culture in the community as well. Hey, Ben, thanks for joining.
Hi.
We got sandwiches and LaCroix over here in the conference room. Yeah, so this is who we are. Camille and I were Cal Poly sweethearts, got married after graduating college, and ended up in real estate. And then we had a family, and I need to update the pictures. We got 2 babies now. So that's Walker, looking for a new crib, real estate agent in training. He's your go-to guy. And then there's a picture of our team, also dated, got to update it. But this is a little bit about our team. The mission now is to connect with people to achieve the real estate dreams, and that's what we do. So some of our values: we're honest, committed, proactive. We believe in education and empowerment to help people achieve their goals. And our vision is that California will become a happier, more wholesome state because it's filled with people who love where they live. And, that means sometimes people want to leave California. We help them list and sell. Sometimes you want to relocate to be closer to relatives. We help make that dream come true. Okay, so what is real estate? Anyone know what real estate is? A lot of times people think it's a house. It's actually not the house. It's the land underneath the house. That's what real estate is, real property. Houses are fixtures to the land and they convey with the property. So this is the preamble to the Realtor Code of Ethics, and it says, under all is the land. Upon its wise utilization and widely allocated ownership depend the survival and growth of free institutions and of our civilization. So the great thing about America was they were the first country in the world to open up land ownership to more than just the aristocrats and the lords that, you had feudal society in Europe. So America, they paved the path to open up land ownership to all people. And so over time, it's become better and more people have access than ever to buying homes and owning land in America today, thanks to some of the great programs that our country puts out there to help people get into home ownership. So real estate can be land, like this vacant lot we sold in Morro Bay one time. It can be houses, like this property we sold, you know, cute, beautiful home. And it can be commercial buildings. So that is just a snapshot of what land can convey. Commercial, land, or houses on it. Okay, are we in a buyer or seller's market? Who thinks we're in a buyer's market? Raise your hand.
I have no idea.
Seller's market, raise your hand. All right, good, good. We got some people in the room who understand what is a buyer's market, what is a seller's market. Basically, what that means is whether or not it's more favorable for buyers or sellers. And if you have 6 months supply of homes or more, it's a buyer's market. That means there's more options. There's more homes on the market. They're not selling very quickly. If it's 6 months or less, that means it's a seller's market. And all that means is if 0 houses are listed this day moving forward, how many months supply we have means how long before we run out of homes. That's what months supply is all about. So I wanted to take a snapshot just to show you where we're at today in San Luis Obispo County. So what we've seen, 2019, things were a little bit slower. And there's about 4.5 months supply of homes, which is that a buyer or seller's market? Seller's market, right? And then we had inventory crisis mode, and it dipped into a hardcore seller's market where there was less than 2 months inventory of homes, meaning everything was selling so fast, multiple offers, things were going crazy. And as you can see here today, inventory has started to pick back up. We're having more listings come on the market. They're taking a little bit longer to sell. We're about 3.5 months supply. We are still in a seller's market, even though it's starting to lean towards buyers. It's still a seller's market. And why does this matter? Well, we know price is determined by supply and demand, right? So if you look at this sales price trend going back to 2008, this is when prices for homes in our area were dipping. And this is kind of the national thing that was going on because of the oversupply of homes, the inability for buyers to qualify for financing. You just had prices plummet. And since then, things have just taken off and gone up and up and up. And really, once that inventory in 2019 started to dip even more, you can see how fast prices skyrocketed and shot up. Now, why buy real estate? You know, it's like, oh man, it's so expensive. Why would I ever want to buy? This just seems overwhelming to me. Because real estate is one of the best wealth building tools out there available. So it gives you financial security. You know what your monthly payment is every month because it's a fixed payment. Rent can go up every single year without caps. Or well, there is caps in California, but they're going up every year, basically. You can budget, yes, rents are going up 5% a year plus inflation is what is typical for the California Tenant Protection Act. But it gives you the wealth building potential over time. It's a tangible asset. You can build sweat equity by doing projects yourself on property. And if you keep it as a rental, you get that cash flow, you get that appreciation, you get the depreciation and the tax write-offs, and it's a hedge against inflation. So one graph that always just blows my mind is, if you look at this chart right here, this is the median sales price of a house in the United States of America going back to 1960. You could buy a house for like $19,000. Can you imagine buying a house for $19,000? Pretty cool, right? I'll take 10, you know? Right. Be a great time to buy a house. But if you told the average couple that bought a house in 1960, your house one day is going to be, look what happens here. 40, 50, 60 years later, the average house in America is trading for $420,000. Do you think that person who bought that house in 1960 would have believed you when you told them their $19,000 house on average is going to be worth $420,000 in 60 years?
No, probably not.
Yeah. It's our minds can't perceive that much growth potential in a house, right? So today, the average price of a house in California is right around $800,000 and $900,000. Sounds crazy, right? What do you think the average price of a house is going to be 30 years from now?
He's gonna keep climbing.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's not even fun to think about. You know, the average price being 2 million, 4 million. You know, one day homes will be traded for $6 to $8 million. And then we're all gonna be saying to ourselves, man, I wish I bought that house when it was only 800,000, don't you? Right. So that's one of the things that just blows my mind. And see, these gray bars here are periods of recession. So even in periods of recession, real estate has weathered the storm and continued to do well as an asset. The only time where it took a major dip and decline was in 2008, and that was a recession caused by the real estate industry bad practices that were going on, oversupply, and lack of buyer funding. Supply and demand plummeted and inverted, and then prices dipped. But since then, we had COVID, and we had this little thing called inflation come along, and we saw the price of goods just jump so much because they printed so much money within a short window of time. Like 30% of all dollars in circulation were printed from like 2020 to 2022. That's a lot of inflation in a very short period of time, which is why inflation jumped up to like 9%, 9.5%. They're getting it under control, which is good. Its target is supposed to be right around 2%. We're just above 2% inflation right now. But this is another reason you want to own real estate. It's a real asset. It's a hedge against inflation. So whether or not inflation's going up, the dollar you hold in the bank is going down in value. Your real estate assets are going up in value during that time because real estate holds its value. Okay, another thing, this just blows my mind every time. This shows homes built by population growth the last several decades. You go back to the 1930s, and then the 40s, and then 50s, and then boom, baby boomers, let's go. That's my parents' generation and older, and they had a ton of babies. And so then they started building 20 million housing units plus per decade. Look at this, population's growing, people keep having babies, they need to put those babies somewhere. Look what happens in the 2010s to housing production. It dropped from 27 million units down to 6 million units. We have a 20 million unit gap. But people kept having babies. Look, 27 million people born in the 2010s. Where are those folks going to go? Where are their homes going to be? We got a housing crisis in this country. California, a nation or a state of 40 million people, we only build 100,000 housing units per year. How does that work? Well, that is the reason why we've seen the crazy amount of appreciation and high prices we get in our area. It's due to a shortage of supply of homes. These are factors that are beyond our control in a lot of ways. There's things that, number one, land is limited. Number two, labor is expensive. And there's not as many people going into the trades these days. So there's a shortage of labor. You guys ever tried to get a contractor to do a project for you? Anyone experience that? And sometimes they don't get back to you. They're slammed. They're always busy. So land shortage, labor shortage, lumber. Did anyone see what happened to the price of lumber during the COVID era?
Oh, God.
It like tripled, quadrupled in a very short period of time due to the supply chain constraints. It was insane. And not just lumber, which is of course you need lumber to build a house, stucco, nails, tar, roofing materials, everything has gone up. Appliances, the cost of everything due to inflation, due to high energy costs, due to the supply chain issues, has made it more expensive to build a house. And so all of that is packed into the price that you see on new construction and the price that you pay in the resale market. So all of that is contributing to why prices are going up. It's not just an artificial bubble. These are very real constraints we have. This is a supply chain issue, and there is no lack of demand. So that's why we continue to see prices doing what they do. Now, I have to address the media because the media always points out, oh, we're in a housing bubble. Real estate prices are about to pop. And I went to a conference one time and I saw this snapshot. I took a picture on my phone, so it's not the best quality, but it's just like headlines about the real estate market. Over here on this side, October 2015, housing today, a bubble larger than 2006. And then that year, homes appreciated 5.1%. Average home used to be 300,000, then by the end of the year it was 315. August 2016, we're in a new housing bubble. Homes went up 5.4% that year to 332. November 2017, homeownership doesn't build wealth. Study finds homes go up 6.1%. 353 is the new sales price. September 2018, it's better to rent than to buy in today's housing market. Homes went up 4.1% that year. And time after time after time, the media says prices are going to fall. Beware, don't buy. And prices went up 4%, then 16%, then 18%. And the median price of a home today is $420,000. When if we listened to the media back in 2015, we could have got a house for $300,000 based on national average, but today it's $420,000. So I caution where you're getting your news sources. Go to the actual like local experts for wherever you're going to be buying real estate to consult with them about what are prices doing, how's the supply of homes in my area, is there any new construction that I can get in on or off-market deals I can get in on. Those are the things you want to know before you buy. So all that being said, the language of real estate, we've got some terms in here. Realtors, those are people who, they're the gatekeepers essentially to the information and the listings. So you want to know a good realtor to get access to great deals on property. Escrow, that's a third party that handles the transaction and they help do the paperwork and they handle the funds to make sure you get the deed for the house and that the seller gets the funds from escrow. Pre-qualification, this is the process you go through when talking to a lender, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. Due diligence, period of time given to a buyer to fully examine the property, often by hiring inspectors or experts to check out the property. So we'll just dive into the 8 steps to buying a property. So step number 1, partner with a great agent. Find someone who is an expert in the area you're looking in, who does deals consistently. Find someone who's full-time, not a part-time agent, because you're going to get a better sales experience if you have a full-time agent representing you. And if there's someone who's prospecting for new business or marketing, they can have off-market deals in the area. So that's another benefit to working with someone local, full-time. Step 2, get pre-approved for a loan. This is so important. You got to know what your budget is. One thing I always like to tell people is talk to a lender, find out what you can afford, what your monthly payment is going to be, and what your total down payment and all-in closing costs are going to be. Those are the 2 things that really matter, is what's my monthly payment and what are my closing costs and down payment going to be. If I can figure out those 2 things, I can get in to buy a house. Step 3, find your new home. This is the fun part. So when you're connected with a great local agent, they'll get you hooked up to the multiple listing service, which is where 90+% of all homes sell through the MLS. And they'll start browsing and curating a list for you to find those types of properties that check your boxes. And then start browsing. Prior to going out and previewing property and browsing, you do need to have a signed buyer agency agreement, by the way. And all that is a working relationship with a real estate professional. It just means, hey, you're my go-to guy, you're my agent, I'm working with you. And it outlines what the broker responsibilities and duties to you are and what their compensation is for those services. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sweet. So finding homes is fun. You go out, you look at property, and then let's say you find a house that works great. This is like the ideal criteria for us. You write an offer. And so prior to writing an offer, you want to make sure you have the pre-approval letter ready to go. Make sure you have your down payment ready to go. And then you get to select what your terms are. So throw out there, what are terms? Does anyone have any terms that they can think of, they've heard of to put in an offer?
Contingent on pest inspection.
Yes, definitely. Contingencies, physical inspection contingency.
Cash buyers.
Cash buyers, they might not need a loan or an appraisal if they all cash. But if you're financed, we definitely want a loan and an appraisal contingency. That gives you the time to have an appraiser go out and determine the value, make sure you're not overpaying for the property. And the loan contingency gives you the ability to make sure that the lender gives you the loan. Make sense? So contingencies are huge. And then some other things to put in the offer. Escrow, how long is it going to be? Is it a 30-day or is it a 45-day escrow? And what's your earnest money deposit? Earnest money deposit is a portion of your down payment. You're putting it up front. It's called good faith deposit. It shows the sellers you're serious. You have some liquid cash. and it gives the sellers the ability to pull it off the market in confidence that you're moving forward on the deal. That money is protected while you have those contingencies in place, and you can cancel and get it back. Make sense? You're fully protected. When we write a contract, you have a lot of protections, a lot of ways to negotiate, but the seller can't cancel on you unless you're in breach of the contract. So it's really friendly to buyers, the way we write our contracts. So when you're under contract, some things to look for are, those inspection reports. Maybe they say, hey, there's some mold. Now we need to get a contractor in there to figure out what's it going to cost to fix the mold, or foundation, or a roof. Those are additional inspections. So when buying a house, some things you want to budget for are, you definitely want to have about $500 for a home inspection, and then about $90 for a pest inspection. It's typically what we tell our clients to budget for. Additional inspections like foundation could be $200. Roof, depending on how busy they are, could be $200. And then contractors, depending, you might have to pay them for their time or for their bid as well. So budget a couple $100 just for those inspections. Now, this is really important because once you get those reports back, you can actually ask the seller to either fix it or give you some closing cost credits to cover the cost to fix it, or reduce the price. So this is where we really shine for our clients, is we negotiate really hard and we work really hard during our contingencies to get as many inspections done on the property as we need to in order to try to help cover your costs and reduce your cash out of pocket at closing. Any questions on that portion under contract? Okay, cool. Another thing to note is insurance. You got to make sure you get good insurance because California's gotten way harder to get insurance on property. And there's some other tips in here on what to do before you close. You go in for closing day, you bring in your 2 forms of ID, like a passport and driver's license. Even a Costco card would work because it's got a picture of you on there. So just 2 forms of like photo ID so they can confirm who you are before you notarize and sign. And then you get keys to your new home. Any questions about that? Simple, right? There's only 180 steps in a real estate transaction.
Nice.
And so that's why you want to make sure you have a great real estate team working for you, going through the steps with you. We have checklists that we follow on our team, and our assistant, Haley's amazing. She goes through and makes sure that nothing slips through the cracks and that we're on track to close your deal on time. So what can you expect as far as like a buyer timeline would be? And I mean, this is just like an example, but you could find it, your trusted real estate agent, that could be like 1 to 2 week process of if you're interviewing multiple agents. Step 2, get pre-approved with a local lender. That's about a 1 to 2 week process as well. And then come up with your list of non-negotiables, get your search criteria dialed in on the portals, and notify your agent of properties that you're interested in. Step 4, go out and tour homes. That could be anywhere from 1 week to 4 months. We've had some clients that we show them one house and they're like, this is it, let's write an offer. And I'm like, sweet, let's do it. We write an offer and that's the house they buy. Other times, usually people want to see like 3 or 4 houses before they write an offer. And so we always match our clients' pace. If you're super, let's go gung ho, we're in it with you. If you want to see more houses, tour the market a little bit more, we're with you in that. But that's a super key component, is touring homes is really fun and it gets you educated on the market. But then you also want to make sure they're in the budget, and that's why you got to talk to that lender first. And then step 5, make an offer, negotiate the deal. That could be a 3 to 5 day process of you write an offer, you submit it, you have to wait a few days. The counter comes back, you review it, wait a few days. You send them a counter, they wait a few days. So it can go back and forth for a couple times. So 3 to 5 days on that. And then the escrow process is typically 30 days, sometimes 45 or 60. So you can say 1 to 2 months. So if you look at this whole thing and add it all together, I mean, most people we meet with for like a personal buyer consultation are 6 to 18 months out from actually making a move. So it totally depends. Like one of our clients we met with, they ended up closing on a house 45 days later. So it could be really fast. Or another client we met with 5 years ago and they still haven't bought a house. So it totally depends on our client's needs, and we match their motivation. So client reviews, some great clients we've had the pleasure of working with, And they were just young, hungry people in their 20s, actually, for these two. And they did have some parental support, which was super helpful. And they, the top one, met with him, took him out. We saw 3 houses, and we ended up writing, I think, 1 or 2 offers. One of them didn't work out, and the next one did. And then we closed within 45 days of our first consultation. He didn't think it was possible. He had no idea. And once we sat down and walked him through it, got him connected to the right people, boom, it happened. It was great. This one right here, another great example. First time buyer, did have some parental support. And we went out, we looked at one property. It was the one, and wrote an offer, and she closed on it. Like, that was like 35 days from the time we met to she closed on her house. It was really fast. This one was another great experience. This was for a first time investor. And he said, the Schwaegerle team is the best in the business. Owen and team genuinely have their clients' interests at heart. They're easy to work with, diligent and top of everything. They know how to bid without overpaying, and are meticulous with analyzing results of inspections and clawing back repair dollars on their clients' behalf. Even buying a home from afar is convenient when you have a trusted partner like the Schwaegerle team on your side. Highly recommend them for all your real estate needs. So we've got over 300 Google reviews, 5-star. It's amazing. We're so grateful for all of our clients that have trusted us with business over the years. Okay, so a little background on us. My wife and I, we were, newlyweds living in a small little apartment, and we were like, how are you going to buy a house in California? It's just so expensive. And we got into this concept called house hacking. Has anyone heard of house hacking? Okay, this is a strategy. We love this strategy. So what you do is you don't buy a house, you buy a multifamily building. So this property came up, was a 4-unit property, and it was like super cool. We're like, oh, let's go for it. And we talked to the lender, we got pre-approved super fast. We made an offer, we went under contract, and then the lender couldn't perform, and all of a sudden we couldn't get financing. And we're like, oh no, wait, but this is like the perfect deal. You said we could afford it. What's going on? And then we called Kim Rivas. And so Kim Rivas, she's known as the closing queen. She comes in, or cleanup queen. She like closes deals like crazy. And she was able to help us in the middle of the transaction. We almost lost this fourplex because the finance guy we had did such a bad job. And she came in and helped us get the loan that we needed. It was a 5% down, like first time home buyer type program, which is amazing. You could get 4 units for 5% down. I was like, that's awesome. That's super cool. And the best part was like the 4 units of rental income helped pay our mortgage. So we were able to live in this property rent-free essentially. So it was a fixer-upper though. We have some before and after photos of what it looked like. And my wife, her number 1 criteria was it had to be cute before we could move into it. So that summer we got to work, we're hustling. My brothers came into town. We were all working on this thing. We had friends, family, everyone was working on this property, fixing it up, DIY, do it yourself, building some sweat equity. And so we were able to turn, these old kitchens, just paint the cabinets, put in this like slab granite countertop, put in new stainless steel appliances, put in vinyl plank flooring, new baseboards, and light fixtures. And man, it spruced up so nice. Like we put in a tile shower. We really splurged here. That was a nice fancy thing, but it took a long time to do. And anyway, we saved money by doing it ourselves a lot. Here was one of the units, the front house, and we just upgraded with vinyl plank flooring and paint and light fixtures. So really, like, you can get into a place and do stuff on a budget. And a lot of people are uncomfortable and think, oh, this is a tear down or a fixer up, or I can't do this. But if you can see past that and see the equity potential, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a great deal. Like, let's go for it. So we actually created a podcast about this whole topic called the Happy House Hacking Podcast. So if you're interested, you can scan that QR code and subscribe, like our podcast. And the goal is to help educate and empower more young people in California to buy homes. So I really encourage you guys to check this out and listen to this stuff, because we interview other people, like first-time buyers, house hackers. We interview contractors and architects and people who helped us build ADUs and do our projects over the years. So, okay, now commissions. I got to address this since there was a change in the real estate industry recently. So it used to be like the listing agent would sign an agreement with the seller, 6% commission, and then they split it 50-50 with the agent who brings the buyer. It's 3%, 3%. And all commissions are negotiable. They always have been. So there was a recent lawsuit, which actually is now requiring the decoupling of commissions. So commissions are no longer, it's never been 6% standard. That's just what a lot of people who do deliver great value and service have charged. But anyway, they decouple the commissions and the seller's responsible for their agent fee, and then the buyers are responsible for their agent fee. So what we've been doing and the way we've been getting that cost covered for our clients is you simply put in a request to the seller to offer concessions to pay the buyer broker fee. And 8 times out of 10, they're paying it. So if there's ever a gap in that amount, then the buyer is responsible for curing the difference between the buyer broker fee and whatever the seller was offering. Does that make sense? So just had to address that real quick. And then finding a home, there's great apps online. You can get the MLS as well. And now let's talk about the lending process. So Kim Ravis, the cleanup queen, come on up and share with us about how to get a loan.
Hello, yeah, we do regular loans too, not just the hard ones. So my name is Kim Rivas. I was born and raised in San Luis Obispo County. So went to school here, went to Cal Poly twice. I graduated, my undergrad was ag business marketing. And then my MBA was in finance. So worked in the ag industry for a little bit and decided that is not what I wanted to do, even though I still love ag. And then got into finance kind of through way of a friend at the time who was in real estate. And she said, I think you'd be really good at this. You should try it. And I did and never looked back. So opened my own company in 2009. And so I've been doing this since before I had babies, and mine are now 17 and 15. And we still live locally and love what I do. Best decision I ever made. So Katie Capital is the name of my company. And like I said, we started in 2009. So a little bit about us, we're a broker / banker. So what does that mean? That means that we fund the majority of our own loans in-house. But we also have the ability to broker to 15, 20 different banks, more if we choose. We just don't want to open it up that much. It's a lot more work. So we're available, me, 7 days a week. And you do get me. You don't necessarily work with my assistants, although I do have two. So misconceptions about buying. This is one thing I always like to go over because a lot of people think that you have to have perfect credit, that you have to have 20% down, that you have to have, well, you don't have to have a down payment and there's low down payments. Renting is always cheaper than buying. And why? I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about those. But misconceptions, a lot of people, this is what I hear. So what have you guys kind of heard about buying a house and what's holding you back from doing it? And these are the main ones. Do you guys have anything else that you might have heard of or that might be holding you back?
Just similar to the headlines that Owen was showing earlier.
Okay.
Hype about this being the wrong time.
Yeah. So I've bought twice at the wrong time. Okay. Good stories. Good stories. I timed it real well. I bought in 2006, the height of the market. Okay. And well, that's probably the best story, but I bought in 2006, paid $600,000 for my house. It was worth at one time $300,000 and sold in 2022 for $1,050,000.
Whoa.
Okay. So the reason that I tell that story is because, like Owen said, it's real property. Okay. It's not a stock that's going away. And that's why I love real estate, because you can drive by it, you can see it, you can touch it, you can live in it, because you got to live somewhere, right? So what we looked at was like, what do we do? I was in lending at the time. Okay. We were working our tail off to survive, but I knew what my payment was. Every single month I had a 30-year fix and I couldn't rent for less than what I was paying for a mortgage. So why would I let my house go or sell my house? Because I knew what my mortgage was. Okay, so even in that downturn, you know, we pushed our way through it, made our payments, didn't do a short sale or foreclosure like a lot of other people did at that time. And then again, had that wealth building over the next few years and ended up selling it. And having a good profit on it. So it is, it's not necessarily always going to be that way. Nobody can guarantee that. But, you know, a lot more security lies in having that property and holding it long term. Okay, and there's also other strategies, fix and flip and borrow against, and we can talk about those later, but. Okay. So I know Owen went over this a little bit, so I won't talk too much about this, but the benefits of buying appreciation. So our average appreciation in this county, and this is average over the last 30, 40 years, is 3 to 4%. Okay, so 3 to 4% on 600,000, 700,000, 800,000. You guys can do math, right? You're all real good at math. Okay, that's a decent amount, right? And I have a slide here I'm going to show you that'll kind of look at that number and really what wealth you're creating. And that's why we do say that it is one of the best forms of wealth creation and generational wealth that you can do for your family. Amortization, you're paying down your loan and you're gaining equity at the same time. And in some cases, cash flow. And this is where, like Owen talked about house hacking. We'll also talk about ADU income in a minute. Those guidelines have changed in the last few years, which is awesome for first-time buyers. So this one, I'm sorry, it's a little bit skewed, but this is a buy versus rent. And what it shows in here, this was an actual property that was on the market. And yeah, you're gonna say 549,000. Where is that? Well, it was in Paso Robles. And we had a buyer that actually ended up doing this. But what and they were really nervous. And they said, okay, this is a big payment, but you know, what do you think we should do? I don't know. This makes it really nervous. So I did this rent versus buy scenario. And I said, look, you guys are gonna be paying more each month for this property. You are, hands down. Okay, it's gonna cost more than rent because they were living in like a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, over 10 years, and this is a 10-year timeline. I actually did a 5-year for them. It's gonna cost them $76,000 more, but they're gonna have $360,000 in appreciation. Okay, what's the net difference on that? Almost 300,000, right? And they're gonna pay down their loan $94,000. So you guys can see in 10 years, and again, we could go down to 5 years and they still end up ahead by $72,000. You're not gonna do that rent. Rent is a net negative every single time. You are not paying your mortgage, you're paying somebody else's, okay? So I do this for a lot of my clients when they're kind of on the edge and they're like, I just don't know, that payment's a lot. And it is, and you have to be comfortable with your monthly mortgage payment because I don't get to pay it, you do. But this is really important to think about. I think we paid $275,000 for our first house in 2001. And we thought that was a ton of money. And now I'm like, I wish I would have bought 5. But we ended up keeping that house, using it, pulling money out, buying another house, renting it out, pulling money out again, buying another house. And so because we took that first leap to do it, we were able to actually grow our real estate portfolio. Had we never done that, we wouldn't be in that position. So current market conditions. So everyone has heard, what's the latest that they've heard on interest rates? Anyone?
Might drop another 0.5 point.
Okay, Fed funds dropped 0.5%, right? Yes, no, it's not good. No, it is good. The federal fund dropping the interest rate is actually a good thing long term. So mortgage-backed securities are what drive interest rates, not the Fed funds rate. Okay, it's like a stock that goes up and down. So what happens is when the Fed lowers that federal funds rate, that affects home equity lines of credit, not 30-year fixed mortgages. It affects credit cards. It affects the rate that banks lend to each other, but it does not necessarily have a direct effect on 30-year fixed mortgage rates. Okay. So what happened was we had already baked in that the market had baked in, not we. The market had baked in that they were already going to lower the Fed funds rate by 0.5%. Rates went down. We saw probably a 1% drop in interest rates in about a month period of time, which is fabulous, right? Because we were probably at some point this year close to 8%. But after that, pretty much a couple days later, we saw the rates start to go back up. And they're back up about 0.5 to 0.75% since then. Does that mean they're not going to come back down? We fully anticipate that 30-year fixed rates are going to be coming down. We follow the federal funds rate and the 10-year treasury, but as of right now, we're back up, and I'll show you guys in a few slides, but we're probably back up to the high fives, mid sixes. Okay, but I love this chart because anybody probably under the age of 70, like, doesn't remember the 1980s, right? So this shows, look at where rates were. Okay, so when people say 6% or 7%, they're like, oh my God, that's so high. Absolutely. No, trust me, absolutely. That looks high because when we were here, they were at 2 and 3%, right? Which was phenomenal. Hopefully we see that again, but probably not unless we have another huge pandemic. So since the history of interest rates, our average is 7.75. So we're actually under what historical average would be. So current rates, this really depends on what type of loan you get. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. We will do that in your pre-approval. Like Owen says, one of our goals is to educate our clients as much as possible so they get to make the best possible decision for them. I don't decide what loan type you guys go with. You get to decide that on your own, which is one of the great things about I do is inform you and educate you on the process, and then you get to decide. And then all-time low, just so you know, January 2021 was the lowest the rates have ever been.
Wow.
So first step when you're looking to purchase, Owens is find a real estate agent, mine's find a lender. Okay. And they're kind of interchangeable. I would definitely say finding an agent is one of the best things that you can do because it's going to put you in a position for them to guide you as to what the next step is. Getting pre-approved. Our pre-approval process, I can do same day. It typically doesn't take a week unless you take a week to get me your documents. But usually it's a fairly streamlined process now. And we work with an online secure portal, so everything can be electronic. I'd love to meet my buyers in person, especially first-time buyers, because I'm a super visual person and I like to draw pictures and diagrams. But Zoom works too, or a phone call. It just depends on what your comfort level is with digesting that information. And we want to make sure you understand what that process is and what's coming next. Reach out to an agent to begin your search. We do that as well. I look at it like a team. Everyone is on your team. So if you have an agent, if you have a lender, you're going to have a home inspector, you're going to have an escrow company, all those people are on your team. And Owen and I have a huge amount of experience finding those right people. We have specific escrow companies that we like to work with, specific home inspectors. And that's because we've been through good ones and we've been through bad ones. And we know who we like to work with because of those experiences. So whoever you decide to work with though, make sure you put your lender in contact with your agent. One of the first things that we do after the pre-approval is contact the agent and let them know what you're pre-approved for, what type of loan, if we need to ask the seller to pay closing costs or commissions. We're going to put all of that in there so everybody knows what your goals are, what your abilities are to purchase. So there's no question when you go out and start looking, all of that's on the table. Okay. Now, if you say, I know we pre-qualified for 600,000, but we're really comfortable at a payment at 400,000. It's your choice what you want me to tell your agent. So we are going to give them as much information as you would like. Some people are very private, and we have a privacy policy that's in place that we have to follow. So that's something that we'll discuss at pre-approval. Okay, so why do you get pre-approved? And sometimes I have people comment, they say, well, just wait, just get pre-approved. We're just going to wait a few weeks. We're going to look around a little bit. And I said, here's what's going to happen. Okay. I've been doing this for 20 years and this is how it works. You're going to go out and you're going to start looking. And on Sunday night at 7 o'clock, you're going to find a house where bids are due by 9 p.m. You're going to love that house. It's the perfect one, and you're gonna need a pre-approval letter to submit your offer. And you're not gonna have one, okay? And we're gonna do it at 8:30 at night, but it may be too late because your agent may have babies and not be available at 8:30 at night, right?
It's true.
Right, so it's really important that you do this part of the process as early as you can. And as complete as you can. Sometimes people are like, do I have to give you all this paperwork? I mean, I know it's your life in a file folder, I get it. But the more information we have, the faster we can move. If we have absolutely every piece of information that we need, you submit and get an accepted offer, we can close in 14 days. I just did it on a bank statement loan. So it's really important that if we can get all of that, it's gonna put you in a much better position to negotiate and give Owen a much better negotiating position, especially if there's multiple offers, which right now is not as much, but back in 2021, you were looking at multiple offers. So the better we can make our offer, quicker we can move, the more competitive it's gonna be. So know your closing costs. Again, you wanna know, education wise, you wanna know what your down payment's going to be, you wanna know what your estimated closing costs are gonna be. And the seller sees that you're serious about buying. So if they get a pre-approval letter, they're gonna say, oh, these guys are ready to go, they've already got their financing. You're working with a local lender, so they know the name on the letterhead, and they're gonna say, okay, we recognize that company. The agent's gonna say, yeah, I've worked with them before, they're great. And that does make a difference. It is still a small town in that sense. So it does make a difference who you have on that letterhead. Sorry. Coming back up. And again, expedites the purchase process, so when we do a pre-approval, there are 5 things that we look at. And I've broken it down. This is very simple. I do an interview process, so it's not just me sitting in front of a computer. We really do an interview process with you guys, and there's 5 things that we look at. We look at your down payment, your credit scores, your debt to income, your job stability, and your reserves, okay? So the first one that we look at is down payment. The reason we look at down payment is the more you have down, the less risk it is for the bank. Okay, but this is gonna give me an idea of what we have to work with. It doesn't mean you say, I have $100,000 because grandpa's saving it for me, I've got some trust fund. That doesn't mean we want to use all your money. It just means we know what we have to work with. I may say, hey, you're a first-time buyer. Let's take advantage of the 3% down, put that money away, and let's go buy something else. Okay, because we can get in at a good rate right now. Let's look at those options. Or we may say, this is all of that we need to use to get your payment where it needs to be. So minimum down payment, 0%. Okay, depending on criteria, but there are a lot of down payment assistance programs that allow you to put 0% down. Minimum with your own money would be 3 to 3.5%. Okay, what can I use for a down payment? You cannot use cash. Okay, no mattress money. There are ways around that, but for now, we'll just say no mattress money. It has to be either gift funds, so it means somebody's giving you money that we can verify it came from them. You can borrow against your retirement account. And a lot of people don't know this, that if you have a 401k, you have an IRA, most of those will allow you to borrow against it or withdraw from it. I like the borrow against because you're paying yourself back with interest. Okay, if you withdraw it, there's a little bit different penalties that you would pay tax-wise. But if you borrow against it, there's no tax ramification period. Okay. Funds and checking and savings, stocks and bonds. Okay, so those are some of the most normal down payments. Credit scores, typically 620 is the minimum score that we want to see. You can go lower than that with some different programs. We've financed down to a 520 before. That's not fun. It's much better to have good credit. You're going to get a better interest rate, better terms on the loan. But typically the minimum that we want to work with is a 620 FICO. And if you're not there, don't let that get you down, because there's a lot of ways that we can't fix credit. We can help you or get you to the right people to help you fix the credit. Okay. Debt to income. So how much you have come in versus how much you've got going out every single month. So typically, the standard that we qualify to is 45%. That can vary with different programs. It can be lower, it can be higher. But the maximum is usually 55, and there are even exceptions to that. I've done ones up to 65% before, which is crazy to me, but it worked. But that's how we're actually going to qualify you, and that's what we're looking at is your debt versus your income. Job stability, 2 years required on the same job or same line of work. What's the exception to that? If you just graduated from Cal Poly and you have a degree, we can use that as work experience, okay? Or if you graduated with an AA associate's degree and now you're working in that field, we can use that as work experience. So moving to a new job is fine, even if you worked at McDonald's and now you got a job at the prison as a corrections officer, that's fine. We can use that. You're improving your situation. You've got steady pay. So there's a lot of different exceptions to that kind of 2-year mark. The one that they're kind of a stickler on, but there are exceptions to that as well, is if you go from being a W-2 employee to self-employed, then typically we need at minimum 1 year, but usually they want to see 2 years going from W-2 to self-employed. Okay. Reserves are usually not required, especially as a first-time home buyer. But what reserves is anything that you're going to have left over after the close of escrow. So let's say you're a first-time home buyer, you're going to put 3% down, and mom and dad are going to give you $10,000. Okay, they want to help. You can put that in the bank and use that as reserves. Okay, but typically for most programs, it's not even required that we have these reserves. Where these do come into play is if you're purchasing investment property, typically they require 6 months. Or if you have a lower credit score, sometimes in order to get that approval through, they want to see a couple of months of payments in the bank. So reserves are anything left over after the close of escrow, and it's based on your actual mortgage payment. So if your payment's $3,000 and we have to show 2 months of reserves, that's $6,000 that we'd have to show. Again, most first-time buyer, you're not going to need those reserves. Okay, so what type of mortgage is right for you? And this is a very individual question. The first thing that we're always going to look at is how long do you expect to live in the property? Okay. I had a client that got a down payment assistance program that was called California Dream for All. We were one of the only ones in the area that were actually selected. And it's a 20% down payment program. They opened it up last year. It was gone in 10 days. The funds were gone in 10 days. So what they did is on the second round, they did it as a lottery system. So you had to apply, you had to get pre-approved, you had to apply, and then it was a lottery. So it didn't matter how qualified you were, it was completely luck. But we talked about it because it's a 20% down payment assistance, and part of that program is its equity share. So when you sell the house, they got a portion of the equity. Well, if you're only going to be there for 4 or 5 years, it may not have been the best decision for him. Yeah, he got in, but he's going to owe that money if he had to move back. He was originally from out of the country, citizen now, but he may move back to his original. So anyway, we ended up talking about it. I said, it's an amazing opportunity. If you can stay there for 7 to 10 years, it works out. And he's like, that's what we're going to do. So just something to think about, but it's a really good conversation to have because there's a lot of programs that you don't want to do if you're only going to be there 2 years. Or if you're thinking on refinancing. Some of the first time buyer programs, you still have a lien against the property and you got to pay it off if you refinance. So do you want to have your mortgage paid off at a certain time? Typically first time home buyers, you're like, I just want to make a payment I'm not going to die with, right? I just want to have a payment that we're comfortable with. I don't care if we pay it off right now. And that's usually not something that you're thinking about on your first home. It's probably something you're going to think about when it's maybe your second or third home. You've got quite a bit of equity. You're going to retire in 5-10 years and you want to have that, house paid off. I'm not a big believer in ever paying anything off because I'd rather use that money to invest in other things, but some people, that's just their plan, okay? Again, long-term goals and current debt payments. So you guys may come in and say, again, I have $25,000 or I have $50,000 saved up, but I have $1,000 a month in credit card payments, minimum credit card payments. I would say we're gonna use down payment assistance and we're gonna use that money that you have to pay off your credit cards, because one, you're gonna qualify for more, two, you're gonna have a lower interest rate on your mortgage than you do on your credit card. Some of those are like 30% right now, right? So those are all things we talk about so we can plan for you and give you a little bit of strategy. We are not financial planners, but we do like to look at that big picture. And if you do have a financial planner, I consult with a lot of financial planners and say, okay, what are you doing? How does this house fit in? And what's, your long-term plan with them? So we can make sure that we're all on the same page. Again, part of that team concept. So some of the available programs, these are not all of them, you guys. When I first started in the business, there was literally hundreds and hundreds of different programs. And then the crash hit in 07, 08, and we were left with 5 or 10. It was super easy to memorize the guidelines, but instead of having to look them up every time, but there's a lot more coming back in the last 5-10 years. So there's a lot of down payment assistance programs, grant programs, what I call repayment programs, where you repay the down payment assistance at some point, whether you pay it monthly or whether you repay it when you sell the house. Those are what we call repayment programs. Conventional loans, have first time home buyer programs, minimum payments 3% down, FHA 3.5%, VA, if it's anybody a veteran here online, any veterans? If so, thank you for your service. You get 0 down no matter what. And then USDA is also 100% financing program. It does work for our more rural areas, which aren't so rural anymore, but Paso Robles, Atascadero, Templeton, and there are some other outlying areas, but it won't work for San Luis Obispo, most of Arroyo Grande and Como. And this is income restricted, so there's some, but it is an option. So CalHalfa, I do a lot of these loans. Their guidelines are pretty much the same as FHA. They do limit the debt to income, but it'll give you 3 to 3.5% down payment assistance. And essentially it's paired with a FHA loan or a conventional loan or VA or USDA, but it's basically giving you the down payment assistance that goes on the home as a silent second, which means you don't make any payments on it. And they can also provide you up to 2% for closing costs as well. I have not used this recently. I used to use it quite a bit, but the disparage in rates between just the down payment assistance and the down payment and closing costs is like a full percent. So that doesn't make sense to me, but the seller is allowed to pay closing costs and typically we'll negotiate that in. That's pretty much on any program. We can ask the seller to pay closing costs. It's part of the negotiations. And Owen is a very good negotiator on closing costs in the contract, which is really important to a first-time home buyer. It's not always guaranteed that that can happen, but we do that quite a bit. They also allow permanent rate buy-downs, which is not, I would say it's not super common on down payment assistance, but with CalHFA, you can actually buy the interest rate down, which is awesome. So if we've got some extra seller credit, or maybe we have funds for closing costs, but we want to use a seller credit to buy the rate down, we can do that. GFSA is another, it's Golden State Finance. It's another down payment assistance program. And there's 2 options. There's a repayment and there's a grant that actually goes away. And with the deferred down payment, that could potentially go away if you live there so many years. You have to work for the county, and these are all the counties. So you'll see San Luis Obispo's in here, but you actually have to work for the county. So that means County of San Luis Obispo, you have to work for them in order to get the deferred down payment.
What about Cal Poly?
That's where this one will come down, but that's a repayment second. So
Okay.
you can get the second, but you do have to make payments on it, and it's not forgiven. So university, but these are all good options. to get you in with, if you don't have a down payment. So VA, I didn't have any veterans, so I'm gonna skip over that a little bit. USDA is 100% financing. It's one of the best loans out there besides FHA, or besides VA, sorry, because it's zero down. It's just a very, very tight box to fit into to qualify for. Their income qualification, their debt to income, they do differently than the other loans. And so it's harder to qualify in our area with where our price points are, but we always check to see if it'll work because it's a great loan. Okay, so this, I was so excited when they changed the guidelines because this is, to me, is a huge thing when a family is trying to buy either with elderly parents or you're a first-time home buyer. With properties that with ADUs, it's not considered a second unit, it's considered an accessory dwelling unit. You can do those with 3% down, you can get down payment assistance. And the best part of that, you can use the ADU income to qualify for the house. Okay, we can use 75% of whatever that rent is or the market rents. So when we do an appraisal, they'll come up with the market rents for the property and we can use 75% of that, which is a big amount if you're buying in this area, right? You can rent those places for quite a bit, okay? Same with FHA, we can use down payment assistance and we can use the ADU income to qualify. With FHA, you actually can use 50% of the income to qualify if you use a renovation loan and you're actually gonna add an ADU, which is, I'll go over that. That's a different seminar, but it's a pretty cool program. So this is just going over the renovation with ADUs, So I wanted to kind of go over how purchasing a home with an ADU can impact what you can actually qualify for and how it affects your payment. So purchase price is $790. That's a pretty decent. I think the average home price in Paso Robles, I just saw the thing today, was $800,000. Wow. Yeah. So purchase price $790. You can do it with 5% down on a conventional loan. This rate is probably pretty close to what it would be today. Maybe 1/4% off, too high, but this would be the mortgage. This would be your property taxes, insurance, and then there would be mortgage insurance because if you're not putting 20% down, you have mortgage insurance. There are ways to get rid of that with putting less than 20% down, but I just left it in there for sake of ease. So total payment is $6,000. You guys are like, what? $6,000 for a mortgage? Yeah, no, I'm not paying that. But let's say you've got 2 other units, whether it's an ADU or this one specifically is for a 3-unit property. The rent from the 2 other units is $4,000. So your actual net payment, if you're collecting those rents, is only $2,000. Okay, now we're gonna qualify you on a payment of $3,000 because we only get to use 75% of the rents. So that would be your qualifying payment, but that's what you're gonna pay every month. You can't even buy a house, mobile home. You cannot buy a mobile home for that payment with the space rent. Okay, so this is when Owen's talking about house hacking, this is what he's talking about. And more than that, but this is kind of the crux of doing it. And then when you move out of this, because you're probably not going to want to live in a 3-unit forever, you're going to start a family and want your own space, then you're going to be collecting another $2,000 and you'll be making your entire payment. Right? Assuming you don't take any cash out. But, you know, if you bank what the difference would be, you could be saving that for your next place, which is still 3.5% down minimum, 5% if you go conventional. Okay. So I think that's a really great way to break in, something that we get super excited about, especially talking to first-time buyers, just because there's a lot of different options out there for you to be able to get in that not everybody knows about. So we're located in Paso. That's where my main office is. I am in San Luis every single day. My kids go to school here. And I'm pretty much on kind of tests available 7 days a week. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to chat.
A question on the reserves. I noticed on both of them, cash wasn't an option to pay.
Yes.
But why is gold and silver?
Because it's measurable and verifiable.
Okay.
So you could take it in and get a certificate showing that you have gold reserves or you have it with a holding company. It's verifiable. When you have cash, I know that sounds weird. I had a client bring me in photocopies. Don't photocopy your cash. He brought me in $20,000 of photocopied cash. I'm like, well, that's a federal offense, so let's just shred that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he, funny story, he was, he bred fighter,
Yeah.
the chickens, cocks. Yeah, to fight, and so they paid him cash, and he would ship them overseas, well, that's where his money was coming from to
Oh
buy
my,
the house.
it's so
And
crazy.
he buried it in his backyard. I'm like, okay, so where did you live and where, yeah. So funny story, but no cash. Now there are ways to kind of navigate that. If we season it, so meaning you can put it in the bank, and then if we have 2 months of bank statements which not showing that deposit, then that's what we call seasoning. But initially, if you just said, oh, I'm gonna deposit $50,000 into the bank and I wanna use that, we can't.
Interesting.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, I'll turn it back over.
All
to you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So that is pretty much the end of our presentation. And what I want to end on this note is this ancient Chinese proverb that I've heard, and it goes like this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So the time to build equity, start owning a home, building wealth, as we saw from the timelines, the trajectory, is as soon as you can possibly do it. And so it is expensive. It is daunting. Rates do seem high right now. And there is a lot going on in the economy and the market, the world. And yet people are doing it every single day. We've helped so many first-time home buyers this year. I think we just closed our 47th transaction today for clients, and about 8 of them have been first-time home buyers. So people are doing this. Like, it just takes a little bit of grit, a little bit of determination, going outside of your comfort zone, living in a market that has a lower price point. Our first home was in a more affordable part of town, and that's how we got in. And so you got to be willing to make those sacrifices as a first-time buyer. You got to be sometimes willing to compromise, that starter house isn't going to be that forever house. It's not that dream home. Most people, they need to start somewhere, even if it's a townhouse or a condo. Like some of our clients this year, first-time buyers, they're buying condos with multiple bedrooms and renting those bedrooms out, using the border income to either help them qualify or to pay the mortgage. So it can be done. There's still affordable properties in this county, and that's what we want to leave this on, is you might not be ready to buy a house today, but when you are ready, contact us. We can sit down and make a game plan. And if you hear of any other friends or family who are looking to buy or sell real estate sometime soon, let us know, because we're always happy to help your referrals. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming out tonight. We're so grateful we had you here.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Being here on Zoom. We appreciate you guys. Thanks, Clarissa, Evan, Easton, Anton. Thanks for being here. You guys have any questions, by the way?
No, it was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Very cool.
Yeah, this was totally incredible. Really great learning experience for us.
Awesome. Happy to hear that, Anton. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
All right. Well, y'all have a great night.
Have a great night, you too.
Woo!
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Kim.
Absolutely.
That was great. Thank you.
Kim, do you have a business card?